a lot of artists feel like, like when you've had enough, you kind of like scream it, I've had enough, and people will like be kind of like thrown off because they're not expecting like that reaction.
Mhm.
Because, educating people or to, telling people about an issue and like wanting them to work with you on it, sometimes you have to push extreme so they can meet you halfway.
Andrew, tell us about you. How did you? What's your story?
Um, my story, it's a long story. I grew up in Lebanon in my hometown called Zahle. It's about an hour away from Beirut, the capital. It's like this like mountain village. Uh, really beautiful. I grew up there. I always had this creative fire in me as a kid. Didn't know what it meant, didn't know how to channel it. And yeah, I grew up surrounded by like, art and poetry. And um, I also grew up during the golden age of like MTV and, when TV and media was like, um, such a good source
Yeah, yeah.
of light and power, but I was always attracted to like that world, and I always, you know, was inspired and attracted to like, world building and just like mise en scène in general. So eventually I ended up studying film in school just because I had to choose something. You know, my thing is I didn't really have advisors to advise me like, okay, study this. So I just chose film because it's like, I don't know, I feel like I've always in my life followed a path,
Mhm.
sometimes knowing and sometimes not knowing why. And yeah, anyways, I studied film in school. I started in Lebanon, did like 3 semesters, and I moved to America when I was 19 years old. Continued my studies in University of Toledo in Ohio, and you know, cut to now, I am a creative director, DJ, producer. I work in music and art and design, and yeah, I live between New York and Los Angeles. I always don't mention LA, no shade to LA, but I don't claim LA. Uh, so I say I'm from New York, although my friends knows I like live more in LA than New York, but that's like my identity crisis I have to deal with.
You have to choose
Um,
as an American between the two sides.
well, when you live in a city more than a city and you say you're like from the other city, your friends will clock you, be like, you live in LA. But I always say I live in New York, although I like only spend a couple months a year in New York.
What city do you prefer then?
Definitely New York. LA has people like always are attracted to it, to the weather, to like the how you can make your own nest in LA. I'm like I love pedestrian cities where I can open. I'm very spontaneous. My friends hate me because I don't make plans.
Hmm.
But I love to open the door and just like stumble upon life. You can't do that in LA versus New York. It's perfect for a mind like mine where it's like just spontaneous. And also just I love walking and like just deciding where to eat on the spot and where to go on the spot. It's also youthful, and um, I love to drive, but like driving culture, like, it's to me requires so much planning and so much like you have to know everything. You can't just like drive your car and like stumble upon
Mhm.
stuff. So New York for sure.
No, for sure. What city inspires you the most then? Because since you're walking around a lot, it's known, it's getting fresh air and like doing things on your own help a lot for that. And I saw and I read online that you were not going for the trends, but like more for authenticity. What's your creative process?
You know, I always love to channel like the city's energy. Like different cities honestly inspire me, and you know, I try to like have like this romantic relationship. I'm like in an open relationship with cities. You know, I grew up in Lebanon, so to me, you know, I believe the grass was always greener. So like when I grew up in Lebanon, I was used to like Beirut and even Zahle and a lot of Lebanese cities. So like the inspiration definitely came from there, but like I always looked out to like maybe the West, to Europe, to America. But when I moved to America, you know, I started appreciating more like Beirut as like art and design and inspiration in that way. So to me, the inspiration like changes. I think once I like kind of, it's like a romantic relationship. Once I like get what I want from it, I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, this is attractive too. Um, you know, yeah, like I think it's, you know, my one friend told me, he's like, oh yeah, your work like channels like locations and cities. So I never thought about that, but now thinking about it, yeah, different cities inspire me. You know, Berlin is beautiful, New York is beautiful, New Orleans, beautiful. Um, you know, um, again, Beirut. I also recently went to Japan for the first time, so I also was like, my mind was like glitched out because I was like, wait. So
So
yeah,
information at once
yeah,
and the new culture.
exactly. I think that's why to me, like, I love like I love like authenticity and like how cities, a lot of cities have their own character, and um, every time I go to like a place that I love, I feel like I'm a kid in a carnival or at Disneyland, just like looking at the architecture, the, you know, the little nuances that makes the cities what they are, how people drive, how people, you know, are kind or unkind with each other. You know, it's always inspiring. Um, yeah, I think what inspires my work, honestly, a lot of, you know, I don't think I always look I love authenticity like you said. You know, I always try to find what 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 actually relates to me and like my story. I usually I'm a storyteller. You know, I studied film, so I always like, you know, try to tell a story through a medium. Um I think, yeah, what inspires me changes and, you know, can be random. Sometimes it's a color, sometimes it's like
A feeling, a
a
pain.
feeling. Absolutely.
What inspires you the most?
You know, I'm being in my 30s, I think is such a beautiful chapter because I feel like, you know, like the design critical thinking has become like part of like my subconscious. It's like muscle memory. So like now I'm very inspired by like how can I use art design to actual make a change.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I'll give you an example. As a DJ, you know, yes, I am interested in making people move and groove and bounce, but I'm also interested to use that medium to, especially now, to challenge fascist states and, you know, like channel the freedom of speech that not everyone has access to, and you know, that privilege. I'm like very inspired to just like challenge myself first and also um you know, governments and societies
Hmm.
in my own way. So to me it's like as an artist, the what brings me like that like tingle sensation that like, oh, this is happening and you feel it in your brain.
Hmm.
Just bringing change and challenging through art, bringing awareness, bringing topics to the spotlight. Uh, is like so inspiring to me. I grew up an activist in Lebanon. Uh, we had to go through so much political and social and religious hurricanes, and our identities are so complex. So I always say I'm an activist before I'm an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, like this activist inside of me, yes, is getting tired of all the shit that keeps repeating in the world. But I feel like this activist inside of me have been like challenging activism through different um through through these like artistic statements and mediums. Again, I mentioned like DJing. I feel like there's an activist behind the decks that's like trying to sneak a message that you shouldn't sneak. I also been telling my friends, because I've been criticizing DJs that are just like, living the life and showing you euphoria, but like I'm like, but what are you actually doing with this platform you have? What do you do when you get to that place of power as an artist? How are you changing? What are you pushing? How are you challenging the status quo? And to me, again, my inspiration is just like, and I also tell my friends, I'm like, they can ban books, they can ban signs, they can ban design symbols, but they can't go through your USB and see what you have on there. I mean, yes, they can, but they won't. So to me, yeah, I don't know if that answer makes sense, but to me, that's like the fuel to my fire as an artist. Yeah.
Lovely. And you started in fashion or before that? This is how you went that. So the beginnings were in Toledo. How was that period?
So I studied 3 semesters in Lebanon at Notre Dame University, and then I transferred to Toledo. I was studying film and journalism. It was beautiful. They had this like amazing film department. I always felt like an outsider, because like, and I'm very shy, and like as little, I was like, my English wasn't the best. So moving there, I definitely was like, and I was like surrounded by film geeks. And although I loved film, but I always felt like, oh shit, like I'm surrounded here by like people who actually just like
really know their stuff.
And being from Lebanon, I had access, but not like Americans do have access to like media and like resources. So it took me a second to like feel comfortable and not self-conscious. And but I was always a hard worker, so I always like hit the ground running. And yeah, I feel blessed to like have studied film, because like my favorite, and my biggest blessing is like I learned a lot of stuff analog. So I learned like how to shoot on a Bolex, how to develop film, how to cut on editing beds. Like,
wow, with by hand, yeah.
Yes. I'm not saying I loved it. I mean, to me, it's a blessing, but like it's so nerve-wracking. You shouldn't scratch the film. The whole film was like, scratched and dusted.
It adds texture.
Yeah, but it was so romantic. Just learning all that. I learned optical printing. Like I learned so much. I mean, now after the semester I graduated, they like transferred everything to digital, because it's about time. So yeah, my experience studying film in Toledo, Ohio was so beautiful. Shout out to my teachers. I had the most amazing teachers, Holly, Tammy, and so many other teachers that, to me, teachers are the gift to the world, because
100%.
they shape us and they see the light in us, and, it's their job is to, guide you, and there's so much humanity and motherhood poured into this craft, and Also, I learned a lot of film theories, watched the coolest, most, you know, just like film cinema history, which, without school, I wouldn't have like, seen these movies. And yeah, and school was so much fun.
From all these beautiful memories, which one was the one that pops up to your mind when you think about it? Because like when I see your smile when you're explaining this whole journey, there must be something that was very special. What was it?
Um, it's um there's so many special memories. The one special memory is um me and my dad, we have, such like an Arabic dad and son relationship, I guess, where we like don't really like, we like talk the basics. We love each other, but we don't go in depth about our feelings.
Hmm.
Like I never tell my dad, "Hey, I love you so much. You mean so much to me, and this is why." Because I don't know. Uh, it's it's uh it's versus my mom. I feel like I can say that to my mom. But one of my sweet memories is one of my final projects was to like make this film about something personal. And I ended up talking about my dad, and I was crying in this project. And my father and my parents came to the showcase, and they saw it, and I feel like it's like such a
It's an incredible experience.
yeah.
Bonding.
Yeah, my parents were definitely not expecting to like see that, and it's like one of the sweetest memories. Again, like how I used my film to just communicate this feeling that sometimes like, sitting like that with your parents, you might not be able to. So I learned like the power of film and the power of art. How can you just pour your emotions in something that sometimes words cannot, to
100%.
me, cannot communicate.
So you still do it nowadays in your current workflow?
For sure. I hate confrontation, like sitting that confrontation, which is awful because I'm like, God, give me that gift. But therapy is not working like that. But, I think it's meant to be because that makes me like, I'm like, all right, I can't say that to you. So I'm going to go make a song about it and play it to you. And you're going to be like, wait, or I'm going to make a film.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you use a different medium too.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah. For the bitches that hate confrontation, I guess that works.
For the one who can do it with art, I would say. Art and activism plays a big role in your persona and character and work as well. You said that activism is like over art, but they mix pretty well. What do you think about this?
Well, I said I was an activist before I was an artist. Like, truly, obviously I always was like gravitating and attracted to just that side of the world. But to me, growing up in Lebanon, we had to fight occupation. We had to, this is like crucial things we have to do. I think they go hand in hand. Again, to me, that is kind of like sets up my intention. And, to me, the world, artists, a lot of artists, a lot of like, a lot of artists do like so much essential social and political work that's crucial to society more than any politician, more than any, government. So to me, yeah, having that awareness as an artist, having that core as an artist is such a blessing to me. I try to like say it with like honesty, because sometimes it comes out as like, you're like inferior to other artists, or you're, because to me there's so much as an artist to channel, but to me, this is what I decide is to, you know, make sure, as an Arab, I always keep that energy as an artist, if that makes sense.
So does art need to be mixed with activism, or can art stay just art for the sake of it?
To my own practice as an artist, I try to me, I like art for the sake of art. I mean, no shade. I mean, decorative art is needed. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna say no, all art should, but it's kind of like wasted air. It's, if you have, it's like, pop music, sure. We love a silly bop that will just make you feel good. It doesn't have to carry a message. It doesn't have to, channel a certain heavy political or whatever. But if you can make people dance and yet sneak a message in, consciously or unconsciously or, whatever it is, because in the end, I do think eventually something is informing your
crowd, the followers, the people who are present.
Yeah, so I don't think it applies to all artists, because to me, but to me, to my own practice, I would love for it to do that.
Because there's many different layers on this complicated subject. So we talked about two of them. One was being playing behind the DJ booth as a DJ, as an artist. The other one is being online and using that platform to spread a message. What's then the difference between both? Because then you have a direct connection to the person, when you face them, but online, it can turn into a shit show pretty quickly, especially nowadays.
Yeah, because to me, it's like what happens as a DJ. Let's, I guess, be specific about DJing. When you actually build a following, when you actually have the platform, when you actually are DJing in front of thousands and thousands and thousands, when you're DJing in front of intellects and philosophers and tastemakers, how are you using your platform? To me, also recording artists, or also, it's like, how are you using the platforms? How are you pushing that? To me, my biggest inspirations, if you go back to Michael Jackson and, listening to the Earth song, listening to a lot of his songs, when my boss B went to Coachella and she sang the Black National Anthem, and I can name so many artists that I look up to that boom, have just stood up for a cause, and yet entertained and made you dance and made you have a blast, but also brought awareness and the spotlight to something that actually matters. So when I go to talk about DJs, I feel like, especially the ones with a big following and the ones who are blowing up, I'm also I'll use Honey Dijon, the songs she DJs about revolution, the songs she DJs about queerness and blackness in straight white spaces, that's to me so inspiring as an artist, to just carry your culture, carry your message and what inspires you and where you come from, and bring the attention to it. if that makes sense.
It does 100%. My next question now is like, with
Sorry. One, because also I think people are like more open to these subjects, when they listen to it as their dance. Because a lot of people want to like read about this or that, especially if it doesn't relate to them. If it's a subject or struggle or an issue, they might like, again, bad news is like our daily coffee. We wake up to it. We're like, oh yeah, so much bad is happening in the world. But when you're on the dance floor and you're listening and the DJ plays a specific song or the artist performs a specific song and you're like, oh wait, the emotion is being transferred in such a, like, this energy exchange, this intellect exchange becomes so much easier to send and receive.
Because the context is different. It's more appropriate for a message to be sent smoothly than just like watching news and like seeing all this bad news.
Exactly.
And absorbing them at 7 a.m. or like 8 a.m. having breakfast.
Yeah, or like scrolling on your feed, seeing, what you need to see. It's like, unfortunately, we're just like...
Because what I see as a problem on social media is that you just get shown what you click on the most. So there's just like, you miss a lot of different perspectives, which I think is like super sad, because like we need more discussions like this one where we can hear different perspectives on many different subjects, because like that's when you hear, for example, the world's history, everyone from every country has a different story to tell, and like the way it's told, let it be whatever, it's the Middle East or Europe or America, the point of view is very different. So how can we keep an awareness on that as well? Like, to go back on what you said before with artists and very active people like Honey Dijon, who bring queerness and this whole his whole thematics in these white spaces. But how can we work then together? Because also nowadays I observed a lot on social media that white toxic masculinity is a big thing, and it's this is not okay, of course not. But I also seen that some extremes go then like against all the white people. But that's not what it's about at the end. It's more about like getting rights for everyone and creating a safe society and safe spaces. Where is the limit?
I think a lot of artists feel like, like when you've had enough, you kind of like scream it, I've had enough, and people will like be kind of like thrown off because they're not expecting like that reaction. Because educating people telling people about an issue and like wanting them to work with you on it, sometimes you have to push extreme so they can meet you halfway. I think in the last couple years, I think all the movement, like if we talking about, toxic white masculine behavior and its effect on dance floors, on the arts, on marginalized communities, I think these communities had to like put their foot down, because if we whispered it, I think no one would have heard. But I think it should have been, it needed to be loud and like kind of like shocking, be like, oh whoa, this is I didn't expect this. But at least it made people think and listen, because now like people are getting more aware of like taking space, like let's say the dance floor, taking space on the dance floor. They're aware of like their behavior affecting others. So there is this like kind of, people are open to learn about their behavior and slowly hopefully adjusting. I mean, at the same time we see like, the Elon Musks of the world that's like putting their foot down and like fighting this wave of what they call wokeness. which is insulting, and it's kind of like going backwards. So I see unfortunate like reactions to like the, the movement. But that's kind of to me like the dynamic that always happen when these like extreme ideologies and movement, there's like this dynamic, like if we want to use Elon Musk as the face of a white man who's like offended by the rise of, people he's against liberation, and people asking for their personal, I guess for their rights, because it's kind of like, it's like, to me, it's simply human rights and adequate, and people asking for respect. And then you have people like that just like being offended that like people would ask for that. Yeah, to me, it's, again, you have to put your foot down and scream to be heard. And like you said, it's going to be a journey, I think, for us to hopefully reach. It takes time, right? But even now, when I like go to Lebanon, I travel around the world, I see these conversations happening. I see people talking about identity, about, misogyny, about, patriarchy, like in places that usually like never discuss these issues. I think the message has been received. I'm not saying people are like, down to get to work or to like accept it, but at least they received the message, and now it's time for them to understand and relate, which is hopefully will come, generation after generation. Hopefully will get better.
It got already a lot better, I think. Like, while we've also been, like you even more, like living in big cities, like traveling around the world, like seeing this whole changes, it takes time for sure. But like nowadays with social media, there's a lot of good content online and very educative contents that helps people out to spread the word, especially like in smaller cities where we, as children, didn't really necessarily had access to this information. So it can also go in the right direction. And how can we help with, for example, our platform, this to like to write? I'm not gonna say the right message because like it's super wide, but like to invite interesting people with different perspective to speak about it.
Yeah, I think just like making space is so important. Making space and creating space for people to tell their stories, even if it's like, even if it's not a usual space for them. I think just like making space for these stories to be told is important. And I think if everyone uses their platform, their whatever it is they can use to like feature these stories, feature people, yeah, I think, and be open, to listen to like something you don't agree with or you don't understand. Yeah, I mean, your platform is beautiful because I see a lot of different walks of life, a lot of different, people from different identities coming on. I think that's, being able to share their stories and their perspective is so important.
And this is the product of what I'm living here in Berlin with my friends and with the whole team. This is our journey and this is our life, and it's like what we live. This podcast is what we see and what we go through, in a good way, of course. And like this conversation, just as this one is the one we do have off camera, and I'm like, hey, we need this on the platform because this is going to help other people out on the other side of the world, just like by having this conversation, because I would have loved back in the days to have been able to listen to this. This would have accelerated the process a lot, I think. But then you can also bring these people together and create these times of exchange. You do it with your party function, right?
For sure. Yeah. You know, we've been throwing our party functions for 3 years, and like one of the main, non-musical inspiration was, in New York, our dance floors were becoming, before the pandemic, I guess, the dance floors have becoming like specific to identities. You have the straight dance floors, you had the gay muscle dance floors, you had the gay white muscle dance floors, you had the queer dance floors and parties, and you have the dance floors of color. It felt like every side of the community and New York didn't really party together.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there was tension between these communities, and I would hear my friends say, when I go to this party or to this space, I don't feel beautiful, I don't feel sexy. And these are like my gorgeous, attractive friends, but just because they're more feminine, or they're more this, or they're more that, I feel like, they felt like the others on the dance floor. So to me, one of the biggest I'm like, I like to problem solve and to creatively kind of solve the problems. And, that was like an issue that was bothering me. I'm like, why are like my really beautiful, attractive friends telling me that they don't feel beautiful at parties? So, my goal and what I was like also attracted to with function is like how to architect the dance floor. Um, you know, so we started it, and I was making sure it doesn't become, a gym looking party.
Mm-hmm.
God bless the muscle gods and the gladiators. God bless. But, it was funny to see like how also with music you can just like design it. Because like, when we saw like it was too much this, we played some techno, some of them ran away. It was like funny to use music as a weapon to clean and clear and create space. And it took so much time, and it was honestly hard to create this safe space that everyone feels. We just threw our pride party last month at end of June or July. Oh, I don't know anymore. End of June. But we threw the party, and on Sunday night, it was like the last day of Pride. But everyone was coming to us saying this felt like home. This felt motherly. Because that, to me, that's like the biggest compliment, the biggest, like, I take that with like, it's like I feel like I've succeeded at creating the space, at throwing the party, is when people like feel happy, feel just, feel like they're at home. And again, different people. So yeah, creating space is, you can do it if you have a coffee shop, you can do it with a party, you can do it with a podcast, you can do it, and I'm so happy I'm able to do that with function.
Please be more precise about it. I mean, I understand it, but some others watching the show will not necessarily understand the details. What are the secret ingredients to make this happen? What should these people be careful about, or like put attention on to create spaces and special moments?
If you want to take logistics, like we you know, these details, you have to be aware of your bookings, right? Certain DJs bring certain crowds. So when you're booking, you have to see, okay, this big headliner is going to bring, let's say, you have to understand what every DJ brings. So if you're doing a lineup, you have to make sure, okay, this is, and it comes with experience, obviously, and you doing it over and over and rinsing and repeat. So bookings is important. You have to be aware, okay, this is going to be a more straight crowd, or this is going to be a more, white muscle crowd, or this is going to be a more queer crowd. So with that, you have to design it to like, hopefully, and again, there's no science to parties. That's like the whole thing. But here it's like you have to use your best judgment, your instinct. Also hosts, I think the art of hosting is an art that has been lost lately, because
in the mass of events, definitely.
Especially with social media, it's like people hosting is like, oh, reposting a flyer, or no, it's actually work. The hosts themselves have to like help you bring certain energy, certain crowds. We also bring, we also figure out like our ticketing system. There's certain people that can afford the full tickets, and there's certain people that we create discounted tickets for. Because there's some communities that, especially the creative, the artist communities, they might not be able to come to your party, even though they want to afford that. And so you have to craft something and be aware of that. And also, again, with your bookings, it's like, okay, you want to bring big names, but you also have, we've been creating space for like new talents, new local talents, people that, because as a DJ, you just have to, it's like finding your first gig and your second gig is like probably the hardest thing, because like everyone's like, even if you send your set, no one has time to like listen or, give you the attention, because we're all going through life. But yeah, we've been, I think all these little decisions you have to make with intention. And yeah, I think these are the things that I can think of that can like help you craft your dance floor and your community as a party. Does that make sense?
100%. What about the spaces themselves? In what clubs and in what venues, or where do you do these events? Where do they take place? Because this can play a big role as well.
Yeah, so we've been throwing, New York is our home. We started the party in New York, although we traveled it to a couple of different cities. But in New York, I grew up as, a rave head. So I always love to go to a place where, there's danger of getting tetanus there, or and I feel after the pandemic, there's definitely more like venue oriented in New York. It's like more venue oriented spaces.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I'm manifesting for my party to like actually go back to a rave space, because aesthetically and just like the emotion of it to me is like hits harder than venues. But so far the spaces we create are, to me, the most important thing that, we kind of cherish and we build on is like the sound. So we start with like the sound. Mm-hmm. We started at function at this place called Paper Box in Brooklyn. Beautiful. It's like a grunge, like a rock band kind of venue. There's a lot of parties that throw their events there, but we started there, and the outdoor is really beautiful. And then we had to move to to Quantum. It's called, but Quantum was like more of a club setup, but the sound was like chef's kiss. So we always like try to make sure sound is the most important. Then aesthetically, we take it. You know, aesthetics comes next. Yeah, to be honest, it's been fun, but it's a big challenge in New York because production costs a lot of money. So as a party who's like, you know, from the people to the people, you know, we sometimes pay from our own pockets to throw it, and we don't make money. So we're still honestly trying to crack the code to find these spaces. Yeah, we try with, again, these venues that we've been, it's like very industrial, very, you know, gritty. Yeah, but I have to say, shout out to all the parties in New York and also LA, like just like these American cities that like kind of like don't set you up, you know, your government, you know, is against you in a way. It doesn't set you up for success, so you have to fight so much to like get your creative or your vision executed. So to me, there's a lot of compromising that's being done on our end in terms of like, you know, aesthetics sometimes. You know, we have a lot of limitations, so our thing, you know, so we're always trying to creative. It's never like, this is the vision, boom, executed. We always have to push and
of course
put the pieces of the puzzle together, and they're not fitting, and like an hour before they like come together, and then.
But that's the scene, that's the business, that's how it works.
But I feel like Berlin, you know, you guys seem like you have kind of not help. It's just like, I feel like it's more affordable for sure. Because in New York, you're just like,
But if you compare what raving, like partying, like clubbing used to be 10 years ago and what it is nowadays, the inflation made a very bad, left very bad marks on it. And like nowadays, it's a very expensive hobby, especially like when you have your friends and like that hobby is your life, that your social context and everything that goes around it. It can be very you can quickly be like out of it just because you cannot afford it every weekend. Because like I don't know how expensive the parties are in New York, but like for example 10 years ago here in some clubs you paid like 8, 10, 15 euros maximum, and now we are at 25 and up, and that's just to enter the club. So if you don't have guest lists and you have to or everything that's in the club, alcohol and whatever, the party becomes very expensive, especially if you go out 2, 3, 4 times a month. So that's a big factor as well.
For sure. Honestly, yeah, again, you guys are complaining about 20 euros. Our parties can go up to, you know, like, I'm not talking about like a holiday party. I'm talking about just like a random Saturday or Friday. Yeah, it can be like, to me, it's at least starts at like 30, 40 and goes up to, could be crazy numbers like 80, 100. You know, it's.
I'm just talking about Berlin. Like the rest of Europe is also very. It got worse. It got worse over the last years.
Yeah, and to me, you know, there's some parties that you walk into and you're like, okay, I get it. I get why I'm paying that much. And honestly, yeah, in New York, it's so hard because like also like when you travel, when you want to travel DJs, also like you also want to pay the creatives, the people who work like fairly, because yes, you might be able to like, because you might have another financial kind of source that, you know, or job that is like making you financially secure. So you have, like you said, you have the ability to kind of lose money throwing this like passion party of yours. But again, your DJs, your bartenders, your door people, your graphic designers, your hosts, you name it, You wanna, my thing is we have to pay them and pay them right because it's a lot of work that they do, especially your DJs, because they're not just DJing the 3 hours or whatever. They're actually commuting, traveling, digging, doing their assignment, and that's like, and that's like been the challenge for us in such an expensive city to like, but we do it, like we pride ourselves of, treating people like they, especially creatives, because I'm a creative, so I have a soft spot. I'm like, it's I want to make sure, yeah.
And what do you think? Is it gonna be a good thing? Then, like how is the scene gonna evolve over the next years?
In New York, it's been a beautiful, this summer has been beautiful. Like after the pandemic, there was definitely a renaissance for the, people realized what we had and what we lost in the pandemic. So, when we were able to go out again, people have like realized that, okay, we can't take this for granted. Every moment matters.
100%.
Although now I see a lot of people are going back to the green room and just sitting on a couch in a green room at parties.
Yeah.
But listen, that's the fun part of it. But yeah, I have hope. I'm excited. I feel like people are.
On a good way.
Yeah.
Definitely. Any last words?
No, this is, we can talk for hours and hours.
We can.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah.
It's lovely.